I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be.
Hello, everyone. It's Todd Scrima and the lovely Robyn LaVassau. Jimmy Reed he was with us for some of it, and then he had to go to a meeting because we got to talking too much. We do a podcast once a month for our business partners, our past clients, anyone that frankly will listen to us babble. That's today where the topic is prepare to refi, and this is about managing most people's largest asset is their house. And so to give you context to all this, interest rates over the last 50 years, call it, maybe has averaged around 6.5%. Okay, I don't know if I'm exactly right, but I know these numbers pretty well. It's probably about that. So during COVID, government artificially lowered rates, and we got down to 2.5%, 30-year fixed, which is crazy, never been done before. Then after COVID, rates went, we're around 3.5. They shot up to almost 8%. And it freaked everyone out. And now you got the government saying, hey, economy's slowing down. We think we got inflation under control. We're going to be decreasing the rates. And, you're seeing better rates today. It depends on the program and credit scores and all that, but you're seeing better rates. And we expect them over time to decrease. A lot of people say, the election this and all that. And it is statistically true that they do tend to come down during an election cycle. So there's a lot of stuff in our favor. The government has said, hey, we're going to be lowering rates. So there's a lot of this stuff going on. And some people maybe bought a house in the last couple of years and they're at 7.5% and they're waiting for it to hit 5.5% and then they'll refi. Some people are looking for a HELOC to take cash out to consolidate debt. Some people are thinking of taking cash out so that they could start the business they always dreamed of doing. Mm-hmm. Some people want to take cash out so that they can buy rental homes. It's a big topic. Mm-hmm. And so we thought we would give you some thoughts around when is the right time to do that and when is not. So Robyn, what are some thoughts on this? Because it's a big one.
Well, I think, first of all, in the world of reaching out and spreading information, information can spread like wildfire and oftentimes be taken out of context, right? Or be stated out of context. And so sometimes people think, rates came down and rates are the lowest that they've been. And there's all these little, nuances there. And so there's a lot of false narrative out there. And I would tell you that in general, refinancing should not be fast, easy, and non-consultant based. And I think that we get caught up sometimes in how quick, how easy can something be for me in general. And when that happens, you might be leaving out half the story. That means you might be making a half-wise decision. And I say half-wise, not to babble, as you would say, but in general, when you don't have full context, when you can't take a step back and say, gosh, does this all really fit our goals right now? Does it fit our future goals, right? What are the pros and the cons? Because everything comes with them. And the great thing is, like you just said, your home is generally the biggest asset, right? That people are sitting on it, if you will. And equity in that home is awesome. But it's generally, by general rule of thumb, even in the world of everyone talking about free refinances, it's not a cheap access point, right? When you get something on a credit card, there's generally maybe a one-time a year fee for $50, Todd. Oftentimes there's no fees. So it feels like an easy, an upfront cost way to borrow money. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Very cheap that way. Your home, not so cheap, right? But it's spread out over 30 years, securitized by a big asset. But it takes more methodical approach that oftentimes the industry is trying to bypass. Fast, easy, just lower your rate, just lower your payment. If you could save $100, why wouldn't you? And while that feels, or, tens of thousands of dollars in interest, that might seem, wow, that's a great idea. That's a great deal. You were only going to keep that house for 2 years potentially. So how much money did it cost you to save tens of thousands of dollars in interest, but only if you keep it for 10 more years, right? What is the context to the information? I don't envy consumers because the information is incredibly confusing. So here's what I would say is, as you get ready to refi, one, do not hesitate if you had a great experience, and hopefully it was with the Summit Funding Loan Officer. I'll just shameless plug there, to call back the loan consultant that you worked with, the company that you worked with, and get in front of them. Make sure that somebody is willing to not only consult over the phone, but what you really should be doing is a face-to-face and or a Zoom consultation. You should actually be talking not only about the house, but what your overall financial goals are, right? Things that are upcoming, things that, and I'll give you a great example of this. I had some friends that we became better friends. You know, you meet people in circles and pretty soon you bump into them enough that they become better and better friends. Well, better and better friends. And finally one day they're like, you do lending, don't you? And I said, yeah. This is when I was an actual loan officer with this. And just a few years back. And I said, yeah. And I said, you guys own your home? And oh yeah, we do. We just refinanced. You know, this is kind of during the craze actually of COVID. And I said, oh, who'd you do it with? And actually, dear friend of mine, they did it with a great loan officer here locally. And I said, awesome. And they said, do you know if we can get a home equity line of credit? I said, what? Well, do you know if we could get a home equity line of credit? There's some stuff that has to be done to the house, and the insurance agent's actually really nagging us. They might not keep the property insured if we don't replace the roof in the next 12 months, if we don't do some things to the deck, if we don't take on some more, right, decisions. And I said, well, let's go through your money situation, right? So we talked about all sorts of things, right? How to maneuver, how much they had in cash, what their personal budget was. We went through a lot of things. Well, it turns out that the house was the best way to pay for all of those things. In fact, Todd, it was the only way. But guess what had never been talked about when they were approached about a refinance a couple of years earlier? They were never asked about cash out. And for them, they have a manufactured home. It's a little more complicated to do cash out on a manufactured home. So it was never brought up. They never said anything. And here they are. Really, it was not even 2 years down the road. Rates were good. And they now need money. Well, they doubled their closing costs because they simply didn't, right, have a future conversation. And so what I would say is, in you're preparing to refi, don't get caught up in the rhetoric of the media. Talk to somebody and make sure that they're asking you at least 10 interested, thought-provoking questions that make you say, gosh, have we covered all our bases here? Are we just looking at rate? Are we just looking at payment? Are we looking at everything from future state, right? Different investments that we need to make, whether it's back into the home, our kids' college, potential moving, all the different things that are going on in your life, because that is when a refinance can turn into leverage to wealth building and just incredible growth in the future to your finances.
Yeah, a couple other tidbits, guys. What Robyn's talking about, I have a wrist problem. So I was getting my annual physical, and I told my doctor, I said, hey, I got this puffy thing on my wrist, and it hurts. This is 4 months ago. And he said, it'll just go away. It's probably a strained tendon or something. I said, okay. So I had to go back to him to get referred to a specialist last week. And I said, bud, it's the same bump. It's been here for 4 months. And now they're shooting pain up my wrist when I twist it a certain way. Something's not right. Okay. If he probably just would have asked 2 or 3 more questions and been a little more interested, and I was direct with him because he's been a friend of mine. Our kids went to school together. I'm like, you should have asked me more questions when I was here, because now I'm pissed. I got to come back, and you just kind of poo-pooed me. Okay, and that's kind of what Robyn's saying is like, a true professional is interested in what your plans are, not what's in it for them. And when you talk about repairs on a house, roofs, 20, 30, 40 grand. Okay. So that's something to consider. Expansion. The cost to build a house these days is crazy. And you're like, well, I could build a bigger, we need to upgrade. What about maybe expanding, adding a bedroom, okay, yeah, or adding a second story or whatever, adding an outdoor living area so you're not as cramped. That's something to consider. And then the whole debt consolidation thing, people are like, from a number standpoint, if I have $40,000 in credit cards at 19%, that is not tax deductible. If I take that $19,000 or $40,000 and I put it into my mortgage at say 6% tax deductible, which means my actual rate on that debt is probably 4%. That does make logical sense. Only if you don't do it again. So I was a couple weeks ago, we denied a loan, and the people had refinanced 3 times cash out over 15 years. This time they were going for another cash out. They racked up $140,000 in debt. $140,000. And we couldn't do the loan. They wanted to, we did it 3 times already. Let's do it again. The sad part about it is they are 68 years old. And they'll be working for the rest of their lives because all the equity has been stripped out of their house. So anyway, we don't want to be, we don't want to put ourselves in that position. So a lot of forward thinking on this stuff, I think, is the theme. And it just takes a few moments, but we got to use the strategic thought part of our brain, which is hard. Yeah. It's the same thing around saving money. People say, if I save $1,500 a month, which I know is a lot of money, for 20 years, it's over $1 million. Well, if I save $300 for 30 years, it's almost $1 million. So long-term planning, long-term strategic thought is really valuable in life. And a lot of times it just seems like we're so, and I've been guilty of this, like short-term thinking, but it always has a long-term cost. So be careful on these big decisions is what we're saying. Meet with someone that you trust. Hopefully that's a Summit Funding loan officer. If you don't know who your Summit Funding loan officer was, you can shoot me an email and we'll look it up in the system and email you back. My email is tscrima@summitfunding.net. Happy to do it for you. It'd take me like 2 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. tscrima@summitfunding.net. But that's, so you're going to hear a lot of hype about refinancing this stuff. It's a individual choice based on a lot of things that you have to consider that you can't just tell that, over the phone. And it takes, like my wrist will take a specialist to find out what's wrong with it. You need a little bit of a specialist to figure out what is the right decision for you, not what your neighbor did, but what is your situation. Maybe you're moving in a few years, or maybe you're retiring, or maybe you got to pay for college. There's so many variables that when people make blanket statements around complicated issues, the hair on my neck always stands up and says, something's wrong here, right? You don't know if that's the right decision.
Blanket statements are self-interested, right? Like that's generally the case, right? It's self-interested, not you interested. And you should feel like somebody is so interested in you, that you have really been able to give them the full picture. And like I said, maybe thought about and answered some questions that you hadn't thought about previously in the scheme of refinancing. And that's when you know that you're likely making, not that life can't change, but a really solid decision, and protect and leverage the equity that you're building. And again, one of the biggest assets that you'll likely ever own that will continue to grow your wealth.
Yes. I love it. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for your business. We appreciate you, Robyn. Thank you for your insight. Have a beautiful month. Bye, guys.
If you liked this episode of the Be Your Best series with Todd Scrima, make sure to register for new episode notifications at www.beyourbestseries.com. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review and share this series with someone you want to be their best. Send an email with any questions or comments to beyourbest@summitfunding.net. Summit Funding, Inc., NMLS ID 3199, Equal Housing Opportunity, www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org.